Good day to you. Here we are again, and welcome to another lecture video still under Module 1. From where we stopped, from the previous Topic 1 lectures, we talked lots of theoretical and a bit of philosophical discussions on the functions and forms of history and geography from their interconnectedness to their delineations and even the thinkers behind those boundaries and parameters, with their respective schools of thought also. Now, drawing from the multi-perspectivity of their narratives, we arguably got lots of confusions and clarifications at the same time. I get that a lot also, especially in making those lectures and even this video right now. However, I am delighted still with the idea that I was able to provide you a wide array of definitions from which you can draw your own conceptions of what geography and history are all about, and that nothing's easy in understanding two broadly related disciplines while attempting to dig deeper on their discussions. And to deviate from the previous complicated discussions in this video, by the way, I will also attempt to provide you a simpler general insights, match simple one, regarding the foundational lessons only, no, on geography, which include the key concepts on mapping, the importance of representations, tools, and technologies to acquire, process, and report geographic information. So those are the 3 points that we wish to discuss in this new lecture video. And right here and then, if you have downloaded this video, make sure to watch it a couple of times for better comprehension because that's our ultimate goal here. And if you have enough prepaid data, make sure to stream these when necessary, of course. By the way, there will be separate general discussions also on the different areas of geography, which will informally introduce to you, or introduce you to the various cognate disciplines and its functions in defining the world in regional framework. And before I forgot everyone, in this topic number 2, I will give you a combination of my own lecture video, existing videos in the YouTube, and a brief reading material. As we are going to study a lot of technical mapping concepts on geography as part of its foundational lessons. And to remind you, we are going to have a lecture about the geospatial revolution, specifically on the importance and the application of such tools, in the context of historical researches, for example. I personally invited one of my colleagues, from the department who had been doing GIS infused researches for years now. So this is an opportunity for us to learn not just from the religious context on the definitions, based from the books and other references, but also coming from a real and actual practitioner of such geospatial techniques. That soon-to-be lecture is really important for us as we also are venturing for a geographic research soon. So again, make room for that date that I've said to you, and please do attend the upcoming lecture. Okay, without further ado, let us be reminded of how the definitions of geography or what the definitions of geography are much complicated than we already imagined at first. With all the theoretical and academic delineations from the previous topic 1 videos, we somehow gained impressions that geography is more than understanding the physical and the human aspects of the earth. And to refresh us from what we gathered from those materials, in its oversimplified definition now, geography is the spatial study of the Earth's surface, no? Coming from the Greek geo, which means earth, and graphen, which means to write. According to the geography framework for the National Assessment of Educational Progress, geography uses spatial perspective to study the arrangement and interaction of peoples and places over the Earth's surface. Perhaps the organization gave us an expanded version of the oversimplified definition of what geography is. And in other words, geography examines the spatial relationships between all physical and cultural phenomena in the world. And because it is way beyond broader than other disciplines in both social and natural sciences, geographers thought that it has no limitations. The discipline of geography can be broken down into two main areas of focus. We have the physical geography and the human geography. These two main areas are similar in such a way that both use spatial perspectives and they both include the study of place and the comparison of one place with the other or with another. Physical geography is the spatial study of natural phenomena that make up the environment, such as the water forms, the landforms, the weather, even the climate, and any other physical aspects of the Earth's surface. In its specific purpose, physical geography is also a form of Earth science. It tends to emphasize the main physical parts of the Earth. For example, the lithosphere or the surface layer, the atmosphere or the air, the hydrosphere or the water component, and lastly the biosphere where there are living organisms. And of course, the interrelationships between these parts is one of the central focus or focuses of physical geography. It was also mentioned earlier that some physical geographers study the Earth's place in the universe, the Earth's place in the solar system. Some of them are scholars from the emerging environmental geography, a kind of recent scholarship and geographic studies focus on the spatial aspects and cultural perceptions of the natural environment, as it is also one of the poised intersections, as what is being reflected in your Venn diagram in your screen. Environmental geography requires an understanding of both sides, no? Both physical and human geography. That is an understanding of how humans conceptualize their environment and their physical landscape. And speaking of physical landscape, by definition, it is the general term used to describe the natural terrain of the Earth. This terrain or landscape is believed to be formed by natural forces such as erosion, as part of the geological process. We have also a factor of weathering, no? Tectonic plate action, and even the water transports or the effects of water. This formation, by the way, makes up the so-called topography of the Earth, or topography of the map, or topography of the terrain. This is in regard, or this refers to the question on how landforms are laid out in a particular area. Example is the rising sea levels, no, due to the melting down of ice caps in the northern and western hemispheres. Another is the Grand Canyon in your left screen, which is formed due to the weathering process with a combination of precipitation and temperature. So that is the weathering process that contributed to the formation of the Grand Canyon in America. And to give you a more local example, we take a look at the outstanding physical features of the Philippines. Our very own physical landscape, as repeatedly discussed in your social science, no, subjects and studies in high school, and even in your Philippine history subject in college, our physical landscape is characterized by the irregular configuration of the archipelago. Our coastline, approximately based on the sources, is 22,000 miles. And our country is also characterized by a great extent of the ranges of our mountainous, no, mountainous areas. And we have also narrow and uninterrupted coastal plains. Well, except for those who are already converted as commercial spaces. We have also the generally northward trend of the river systems and many more, of course. Mostly, the islands in the Philippines are believed to be formed by at least one volcanic rock process, no? A volcanic rock process. And our headlands and bays, for example, and any other maritime coast are also believed to have formed by the processes called abrasion. We have also attrition, no, by waves. Okay, that is the process by which the waves transport materials, or they have caused rocks to crash against each other. And another example is the once isolated rock stack outcropping along the beach or along the resort of Barangay Umawas, May Dulong, Samar. And due to the actions of the waves there, erosion and weathering, no, those two processes, the natural processes that I mentioned, it had caused a sea cave. It became, no, the rock that I mentioned earlier became a sea cave and then a sea arc, as shown by the arrow in your left screen. And eventually, from a sea cave to a sea stack, it became one of the most visited spots now in the Philippines. Another sea stack, okay, example, can be found in El Nido, Palawan, and this is also caused by a coastal erosion landform, most specifically characterized by wave actions. The same with the Samar example that I mentioned earlier. The waves also cause this formation and is typically exemplified by steep and vertical column na features, the physical features. These natural landforms that I've given to you, for example, are created by natural processes. No, what I repeatedly said earlier, for example, is the weathering, the impact of the waves. Okay, these are all natural processes, and this led to a point of understanding everyone that everything on the earth really undergoes perpetual modifications. And for that case, it's only natural. It's a transitory in nature. Some will exist in just a split second, while others will take hundreds, no, if not hundreds, probably million of years to understand such process. By the end of the day, it became, one has to become wonders of such country or a particular country. Second stop is about human geography, which obviously focuses on human activity and its relationship to Earth's surface. Human geographers examine the spatial distribution of human activities, just like what you are seeing now on the screen. They study patterns and systems of interaction between human cultures and various environments and focus more on the causes and consequences of human settlement and distribution over the landscape. While the economic and cultural aspects of humanity are the primary focus of human geography, these aspects cannot be understood easily without describing the landscape on which economic and cultural activities take place. If physical geography earlier has the so-called physical landscape, human geography, on the other hand, has also so-called cultural landscape. These are the parts of the Earth's surface that have been either affected, influenced, or shaped by human involvement. However, as also defined by the World Heritage Committee, cultural landscape represent the combined works of nature and of man. This is in the process of transforming physical environments with human-induced ecological changes. We can categorize, by the way, uh, these cultural landscapes as either designed and created intentionally or those that evolve organically. For example, the urban cultural landscape of a city may include buildings, streets, signs, most common are parking lots, and even the vehicles, while the rural cultural landscape may include fields, fences, barns, farmsteads, etc. By looking at this example and these figures, you must take note of the idea that cultural forces which are unique to a given place, such as religion, language, ethnicity, customs, or heritage, these factors influence the cultural landscape of that place at a given particular time. That is why we have more than one typology of these cultural landscapes based on cultural constructs, such as the so-called design landscapes. We have also the ethnographic landscapes, the vernacular landscapes based on ethno-linguistic divisions, and even the historic sites, for public history and heritage conservation. The colors, sizes, and shapes of the cultural landscape usually symbolize some level of significance regarding societal norms, or perhaps it is dictated by societal norms. Spatial dynamics assist in identifying and evaluating cultural differences between places. And to some of what we discussed a while ago, most cultural landscapes are intimately related to physical environment. Thus, the reading of cultural landscapes in human geography presupposes some basic knowledge of physical landscape in physical geography as well. No? However, there's a certain scholar, a British geographer in Clark, in his paper published in 1950, who argued that human uh, was necessary. Human geography was making very limited headway as necessary because of the widespread assumption that physical geography was the necessary basis for understanding the human phenomena in question. And since that time, the pace of change has been remarkable. So this is connected, and this is something to do with what I said earlier, that in order for us to understand the cultural landscape, it is strictly connected to discuss also the interconnections between the cultural aspect and the physical aspect. And this is something to do with Clark's arguments that human is the key factor here, and human contributed to such thing called change. Inevitable change, by the way, or inevitable changes are experienced, especially in the context of many academic disciplines, including Clark earlier. But it seemed that at times, or some of the time, these changes in academic disciplines have reached the extremes of human geography. These changes, to note, are often called paradigm shifts, in which one prevailing and influential set of ideas is replaced by another. Again, paradigm shift is what we are referring to the change earlier, as declared as opened by the British geographer Clark. As reflected in the diagram on your screen, the old paradigm since the 1900s rarely disappear altogether, but leave a legacy capable of resurfacing or re-emerging in some new and amended forms. From its keyword paradigm, paradigm is an established concept, a value, a belief, or a method or methodology. It was the strong questioning of these practices by the scientific community that resulted in the development of an alternative to monodisciplinary considerations. So the paradigm came under intense criticism in the 1960s, and urban geographers were among the main advocates of the need for such change. They established approaches for studying the geography of towns and cities, as an example, were accused of being mainly descriptive, lacking in good measurement techniques, and failing to develop sound theories. And subsequently, in the 1970s, these gaps are again revisited and brought up, citing or quoting the Standard Bearer UN Committee. Development was considered the factor which satisfies the needs of the present, of course, without sacrificing the needs of the future generations. With this, the concept of sustainable development in geography was therefore introduced through applied geography and structuralist studies in such discipline. In addition, the significance of geographic space was recognized, and the notion of location acquired a place at the center of human activities and interests. Earlier, Clark emphasized the key factor as the humans. Now, this time, because of the paradigm shift and the corresponding changes, the center now of human activities and the interest is the location. This transition from a monodisciplinary approach to a multidisciplinary towards geographic space. And under this perspective, development was treated as if it is consistent or as if it consisted of the sum of all the distinct parts of a multi-dimensional spatial, social, environmental, and economic realities. In other words, because human knowledge necessitates abstractions on reality, a simple geographic space was expressed in the form of a set of separate relations, the interdependences of the disciplines and the approaches, and the interactions, creating a sustainable geographic space. But take note that this notion of sustainable multidimensional space requires a multidisciplinary approach. No, and this forms the basis of the new geography paradigm presently in use or currently in use, known as geoinformatics. The traditional model, by the way, of geoinformatics, which lasted until a few years after the end of Second World War, was very simple. It was derived from a manual, analytical, and a handcrafted theory-based approaches, reconciling social and spatial sciences and performed exclusively by and for geographers. According to one scholar, the name of Kostis Kotsopoulos from the National Technical University of Athens, he started the observations, no? I mean, he opened the idea that the geoinformatics started with observations and data capture and ended usually with a map and geographic information as the final output. In other words, using qualitative or quantitative methods such as fieldwork, photogrammetry, remote sensing, and any other geospatial techniques, the data was collected, processed, and analyzed. This model, of course, represents the methodological tools of the traditional paradigm of geography. Okay, so I repeat, this traditional paradigm of geography is the usual flow of processing geographic data, which somehow contributed to the current geoinformatics that a lot of people are using right now. However, uh, deviating from the traditional approach, the increased use of microprocessors altered the traditional model earlier, creating a new one based on computer technology. It was accepted by the academics and professionals alike that geographers had to be in the information business, okay? And all their tasks in the field of the geographers, the lab or the office, let's say, had to be accomplished by utilizing informatics. This resulted in the emergence of a new computational geography in the context of world of computers and cybernetic thinking, sort of. Geographers had to cope up with the data-driven and computer-based knowledge creating technologies rather than mere documenting and collecting data. This model included three distinct and independent approaches, namely processing, analyzing, and planning, as reflected on your screen. Instead of the one phase or single phase traditional model in the previous slide, uh, this new model, this computational technology driven model is a bit complicated one. More specifically, the first independent approach, the processing, changed the ways data was captured and processed. By acquiring it in a digital form and by setting the mechanisms for data storage, processing, and manipulation, these changes resulted in an information system replacing the traditional map of the traditional paradigm, the first model that I presented a while ago. And as a result, the outcome of this processing process or processing stage generated contained digital layers of diverse land or human related spatial data. This is then called as geographic information system approach and analysis. The second independent approach has to do with analyzing. This is the process of transforming spatial data to spatial information and was related to a spectrum of methods and processes that could come to fruitful completion mainly through the help of informatics. It was for this reason also that this approach occupied schematically and in real terms the center, the center or the focal point of the informatics model as it was demonstrated in the work of many geographers. Planning as the last or the third independent approach was related to the effective use of spatial information in providing real-time solutions to everyday spatial problems and issues. This spatial information is also the driving force for us to have solutions or real-world problems based on geographic information data or geographic research and geographic information. These tasks, however, required effective tools for decision making that could not be accomplished without the help of informatics. Now, this time, the three approaches of computer technology model, the earlier processing, analyzing, and planning, are considered by geographers as independent, but yet conflicting endeavors. However, such an approach is clearly and scientifically shallow, logically unsound, and mainly lacking in the necessary integration required in the more complicated but mainly, let's say, dialectic present day, scientific and societal environment. Now, that's some kind of a description of our complicated surrounding right now. Certainly, within the computer technology model, the techniques can be considered as information systems, but they are not exclusively utilized as such. The same is true in terms of their application as analytics or planning tools. Clearly, they are involved in planning, but not only the planning tools, they are also spatial analysis methods, but they are not only that. A geographer, for example, can certainly design informative maps using these methods, but that does not exclude a researcher from executing a very complicated spatial analysis with them. That is, the three approaches of computer technology model from the previous slide are scientific fields. Okay, they are scientific fields which have as common background on their spatial dimension. But most importantly, they are closely interrelated and not independent, inadvertently complementary, and most of all, not conflicting, and thus they can be integrated into a so-called organic whole. Okay? As a result, they should be considered as components of an integrated spatial approach representing different manifestations of a holistic methodology, the foundation of the so-called Coro informatics, the new paradigm of geography, or should I say, the third paradigm of geography. From the previous discussion, it should be clear that the integration model and the integration approaches, although similar to those of the computer technology model in addressing spatial issues, differ in one significant aspect. More specifically, they represent the pieces of a holistic and integrating framework by providing an information system domain within which virtually all of geography can be performed somehow. This dialectic model, by emphasizing a holistic or a multi-perspective and multi-dimensional view of geography, is broader than data or informatics per se. It is open rather than closed. It can accommodate pluralistic research styles and offers no restrictions on subject matter or approach that we wish to study. So everyone, from a traditional approach or paradigm in geography to a computer-driven process, and now we have a combination of the two with lots of multidisciplinary approaches. These are the three paradigm shifts in the approach of geography for, let's say, starting with late 18th or 19th century up until now with the combination of geospatial revolution. And based on the earlier mentioned discussions on the changes that have taken place in our science and the existence of new paradigms, the three paradigms that we discussed a while ago, a basic question now arises. What is the role that our discipline can now play in the realms of sciences and society? Well, in a scientific community where, let's say, every discipline has raised defensive boundaries to defend its purity and importance, our focus on geography offers an interdisciplinary base which can be used to address the integrated issues of our community. Indeed, the distinct and the independent contributions of each individual discipline do not lead anymore towards scientifically sound approaches. In the contrary, there is a need for a unifying base, a common language for all disciplines to communicate with each other, something that the new geography paradigm or even the three paradigms can offer or may offer. Moreover, in a society that continuously demands increasing specialty or specialties or expertise, the science of geography offers the necessary integration, which is the only way to solve its problems. And lastly, we thought of the idea that despite of the variations to its paradigms, geography can offer a unifying approach to societal problems, especially in the context of ecological, economic, social, political, and cultural, and so on and so forth, in a harmony with nature and man. You know? I hope there's a harmony there, something that geography's paradigms can certainly provide whatsoever. This time, as we are done discussing the areas of geography and its changing paradigms, let me bring you on the basics, okay, on the basics to how we can become geographically literate, okay. Please do remember that it is our intended learning outcome in this course on world geography. Geography as a discipline has unique properties, as we all know. These traits are articulated well, especially in the set of the guidelines provided by the National Geography Standards, composed by the National Council for Geographic Education, or NCGE. And this is also promoted by the National Geographic Society. So the standards, which I will be presenting now, are based on the NCGE's 6 essential elements of geography. Each of these 6 elements have a, let's say, subset of geographic knowledge standards or questions that represent the most current conception of what it means to be geographically literate. And take note, these elements that I'm going to present are technically different from the 5 themes of geography, okay? Though there are similar, no? They are similar in concepts, and probably there are some repetitions. And I will try also to oversimplify every discussions on these 6 elements now because we are completely loaded rather with the complicated discussions of the paradigm shifts earlier on the geographic approach. Okay? And for the six elements of geography, according to NCGE, here are them as follows. First is the world in spatial terms, as geography studies the relationships among people, place, and environments, as we already discussed since day one, by mapping information about them into a spatial concept. And in case you forgot, spatial means relating to space. This element answers the basic questions or the guide questions such as how to use maps and other geographic representations, tools and technologies to acquire, process, and report geographic information. Second guide question is how to use mental maps to organize information about people, places, and environments again. And lastly, how to analyze the spatial organization of people, place, and environments on Earth's surface. So that would be the first element. The second has something to do with the identities and the lives of individuals and peoples as rooted in particular places and in human constructs called regions. In short, places and regions. This features the physical and human characteristics of places, how the people create regions to interpret Earth's complexity, and how, let's say, culture and experience influence people's perception of places and regions. Third is all about the physical systems and processes that shape the Earth's surface and its patterns, and of how people interact with plant and animal life to create and to sustain or even modify ecosystems distribution. Example are those physical processes that we mentioned earlier that prompted water forms and land forms to emerge. Aside from the physical systems, people are also central to geography. Their human activities and settlements, the people migrations, and the structures which undeniably help shape or alter the Earth's surface. And humans, with these humans naturally compete for the control of the Earth's surface through patterns and networks of economic interdependence. Special attention is also given as to how forces of cooperation and conflict among people influence the division and control of Earth's surface. Fifth is all about environment and society, which entails us that physical environment is influenced by the ways in which human societies value and use the Earth's physical features and processes. This basically answers the guide questions again, such as how human actions modify the physical environment, which resulted to cultural and physical landscapes, how physical systems affect human systems, such as the transmissions of diseases, the climate, disasters, and any other natural phenomena. This is also the part that we entertain discussions on changes that occur in the meaning that occurs in the uses and distribution, and most importantly, the importance of resources that leads to the belief of environmental determinism and possibilism. And lastly, the last element is the knowledge of geography or the use of geography that enables people to develop an understanding of the relationships among other people, other places, and the very environment that we are living with over time, and that is of the earth as it was and might be. This is on how to apply geography to interpret the past, no? If you're going to connect it with the history as a discipline. Uh, this is to interpret the past as evidently discussed on the connections between those two and how to even apply geography to interpret the present and plan for the future as a common traditional pattern for such thinking. Geography also teaches us to organize our thinking with a view that encompasses the spatial analysis of the properties of Earth's surface. Geography provides us a multi-perspective lens or a framework for addressing the local, regional, national, and even the global questions or different scales of analysis. So basically, those are the six elements of geography. And we are with the last element right now, and we are trying and we are attempting to share with you the practical and the natural importance of geography when learning and studying about it. So again, guys, those are the six elements sponsored by the National Council for the Geographic Education or the NCGE. And again, these six elements are separate from the usual five themes of geography in some of the references in some literatures. And to provide you an expertise on the discussions involving the language of maps, the five themes of geography, and other analytical concepts, kindly visit the video resource links attached in the Mole Classroom under topic 2. And those resource videos feature that person, Mr. Sin, a social studies teacher from the AP Human Geography online course. And aside from he was able to convincingly compress the topics, he managed to give specific examples that we can contextualize to make our lessons easier to comprehend. Okay, so students investigate the interconnectedness of all the concepts presented or provided by Mr. Sin. Okay, so that's all for this video. Once again, thank you for paying attention, and please review this material, ranging from the easy ones up to the complicated discussions. Please review this for a couple of times to have better understanding on the content. Now, guys, this is always a reminder from me to stay tuned for the other materials under Module 1. Once again, thank you for paying attention, for listening, for watching this video, for consuming data just to view this material. Thank you so much and keep safe. Goodbye.